All right, number 5. The table below shows the values of g of x equals x squared minus 4x minus 12. And there's 2 questions that are with this. But before I go into the questions, I just want to talk about one thing. Now, on your tables, anytime that you guys have a table and you have a quadratic equation, which you can tell it's quadratic because of the x squared. So this is going to create a parabola, either opening up or opening down. So based on this, one thing that you can always do with your table is you can draw your rainbows or connect your symmetric points. By drawing your rainbows, always connect your rainbows and then finish your table if you can. The STAR test, as well as any test that we give, loves to hide values from you that you should be able to understand how to get as an Algebra 1 student. So this is what I mean. So if I connect my symmetric points, I have negative 15 with negative 15, which I can connect these two. And then I can connect negative 12 with negative 12. And then even though I don't see it, based on this pattern, I should know that negative 7 also connects with something down here, which I'm going to go ahead and write in now. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1 box to this. And I know that that point, since that's negative 7, it should connect with another negative 7 down here. And then I can go 1 more, and I can connect the 0 to the point down here. So I'm going to add 1 more. And I can connect the 0 in there as well. All right, so I've gone in, I've added a few things to my table. I've connected those values. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cover this up, ignore this part for now, and then look at my other side. So the other side's pretty easy, and we never do rainbows on this side. But if I just look at my table and I just follow the pattern, the next pattern on this side would just be 5 and 6. So this one's pretty easy. It's just going to be 5 and 6. All right, and now once we've finished our table, now that we've found those hidden values, now I can go in and I can answer the question. So the first question says, if negative 2, which is important, if negative 2 is a solution to x squared minus 4x minus 12 equals 0, what is the value of the other solution? So again, here they're saying that this is a solution. So anytime that they say solution, usually they mean that x equals that number. So they're telling me that x is equal to negative 2 for this equation. Which again, just earlier I saw it set equal to g of x. And g of x is just a fancy way of saying y. So really what they're saying is that y is equal to 0. So that's the 2 bits of information that they're giving me, is that x is equal to negative 2, y is equal to 0, again, because my equation is set equal to 0. So I can actually find that point right here. Negative 2, 0. So they're asking me what is the value of the other solution. So again, your solutions are x equals. So they're asking me what is the value of the other x equals equation, which I can just very easily, now that I've drawn the rest of my table, I can actually just very easily come down here. I find the 0. My other solution would be 6. Number 7 says, what are the solutions to g of x equals negative 7? Again, this is pretty easy. G of x equals negative 7. I'm going to be looking at the g of x column, trying to find negative 7. So there's g of x column. I find negative 7. I have 2 of them, 1 there and 1 in here. And again, my solutions are always the x values across from them, so that and that. So I can very easily just say x is equal to negative 1 and x is equal to positive 5. Those are my 2 solutions. All right, now I just want to point something out very, very quickly, and that is if I hadn't done this first, so let's just go ahead and say that I did not fill this in. We'll go ahead and cover this up with something. If I had not filled that in and they asked me, okay, negative 2 is a solution, what is the solution for this? And I didn't immediately see it, I wouldn't know. Or there's students out there that wouldn't know what to do. All right, same thing with this. If they said, okay, g of x has a solution at negative 7, what are they? I only see one negative 7 right now before I, extended my table. I would only see one, so I would be tempted to just give half an answer. X equals negative 1. So you got to make sure that you are extending your table first almost every single time. It only takes a few seconds. Extend your table and then go in and answer the question. So make sure that you do this first before you do anything else. Okay, so extend your table, find your hidden values, and then go in and answer your questions. Okay, because a lot of the times if we jump to the questions straight away, we'll miss some of the answers if we aren't careful with this. All right, number 6 is solving. So I'm going to go ahead and solve both of these. Even though it doesn't say solve by factoring, I'm going to go ahead and factor. So solving, we would draw the line down the equal sign. If you're in my class, I always tell my students that we have 3 steps. And even though some of these steps are kind of chunked, where they have more than 3 steps set into them, step number 1 is set your equation equal to 0. Step 2 is to factor. And then step 3 is to set your factors equal to 0 and then solve. Solve for x. All right, so step number 1 is set our equation equal to 0. So right now if I draw my line down the equal sign, I notice that there's not a 0 on either side. So that means that I want to move this -8, because it's easier to move one thing than it is 3 things. I want to move that to the other side. So to do that, I'm going to do the opposite sign. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And the way that I always think about these is there's 3 different types of things that I can have. I can have an x squared, I can have an x, or I can have a number. So to figure out where the 8's going to go, I'm going to put it underneath the numbers because that's what 8 is. It doesn't have an x or an x squared attached to it. So I'm going to put it just right underneath the 16. I can go ahead and simplify my expression or simplify my equation simply by taking this. Positive and negative are going to give me a 0 pair, so there's 0. X squared I never touched, so that's going to come straight down. -10 I never touched, that's going to come straight down. Minus 10x. And then this 16 plus 8 is going to give me 24. So there's my new equation. So now my first step is done. I've set my equation equal to 0. Now I go in and I factor. So I ignore the equal 0 when I factor. I just look at that trinomial, x squared minus 10x plus 24. So we go in and we factor, we do the x box. So factoring steps, we always do first and last, again paying attention to the signs as we put them in. So we have x squared and we have positive 24. For your x, we always want to title these ABC. So what I do is right above them I just write ABC. Again, we only look at the numbers. We don't really worry about the x's. So down at the bottom, we'll start at the bottom. That's where I always start. So B goes on the bottom. That's how I remember it. And my B in this case is going to be that -10. Again, paying attention to the signs, making sure that they go in with their sign. Up top, we have A times C. Again, paying attention to the letters. So A is technically the number in front of x squared, not x squared, so that number would be 1. So we have 1 times 24, which gives me 24. You then go to your calculator. And you find your factors. So the way that I do this is y equals. You always use your top number in your equation, so you never switch that. So we have 24 divided by x, and then 24 divided by x plus x. So those are my factors. Then I go to my table. And now is when I focus on my tables, when I focus on my bottom number. My bottom number is -10, so I have to find -10 in the y2 columns. What the two equations do is they add your terms together. For example, 3 plus 8 is 11, 4 plus 6 is 10, right? So all these equations do is just add these for you. So we have to go in and find -10, which -10 is going to be the factors -4 and -6. So then we write those in. Once I find these factors, I can go in and I can plug them into my box. Now, whenever you plug them in, make sure that you include the x when they come in here. Because technically what we did is we're taking this and we're splitting that middle term, that -10x, into -4x and -6x. All right, from here we factor. The way that I always think about factoring is I always undo this. So x squared is always going to be undone as x times x. And then I just kind of do fill in the blank. X times something needs to give me -4x. Well, I already have the x. And again, to multiply, you follow this stuff in. So x times something gives me -4x. That something's going to be -4. And then x times something gives me -6. That something's going to be -6. And then always make sure that you check this last box. -4 times -6. Negative times negative is positive. And 4 times 6 is 24. Alright, so now that we've found our factors, so now we've gone in and we've factored. Now step 3 is finally going to be set factors equal to 0 and solve. So we have factor on top is x minus 4. Factor on the bottom is x minus 6. I set it equal to 0. So really what I'm doing is I'm rewriting this expression here, which is x squared minus 10x plus 24. I'm rewriting that as x squared minus 4 and x minus 6, and I'm still writing that equals 0 part there. So I do that first, and then I do it individually. So then I set each of these individually equal to 0, and I solve. So to solve is pretty simple. You draw your line down your equal sign. This is a standard one-step algebra 1 problem, so I'm going to box in my variable. I always box mine in. It just kind of helps me. So box it in, cover it up. To get rid of this minus 4, you do the opposite sign, so we're going to do plus 4. Positive 4, negative 4 create a 0 pair, so they go away. 0 plus 4 is going to give me 4. And then my x that was in that box, I'm just going to bring it down. And so we have x is equal to 4, which is one of my solutions. And then do the same thing on this side. Box in my x, opposite sign, so I'm going to do plus 6. This goes away because it becomes a 0 pair. And then that becomes x equals 6, which is my other solution. Okay, jumping over to B. We have, again, same steps. Set equal to 0, factor, and then solve. So draw my line down my equal sign. Let me switch pens. Never mind, I thought I had a different color pen. Okay, so move this 3 over to the other side. So this time 3 doesn't have a sign. So to set my equation equal to 0, I'm going to do the opposite of this, which if it doesn't have a sign, I can assume that it's positive. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. This goes away and becomes 0. And now these, technically my a would be my x squared, so that's going to come first. My b would be the one with just the regular x, again making sure that I keep track of the signs. And then finally my c is just a regular number, so the 3 and the 2x I don't combine. X and numbers are different things, so I'm going to go ahead and just write minus 3 right there. Alright, we check for a GCF. There is none. 5, 2, and 3 don't have a common factor, so then I go in and I factor. So again, we go into X box. So we do first term and last term, again ignoring the 0. The 0 isn't part of my terms. So first term and last term, so that's going to be 5x squared and minus 3. B goes on the bottom, so that's my middle term, that's going to be the negative 2. And then a times c goes on top, so that's going to be 5 times negative 3, which is going to give me negative 15. I then go in my calculator. This time we have negative 15 divided by x, and negative 15 divided by x plus x are my two factors. Do the second graph. And again, I'm looking for my bottom number now in my second column. So we're looking for the negative 2 in this column. If I see positive 2, I'm looking for negative 2, which is right there. Negative 5 and 3. So those are my two factors. Oops, positive 3. So then these two go in the box. Of course, it doesn't matter where you put them, but just make sure that you include them in there with the x. All right, and then we factor this out. So this one I always call like a level 2 factoring. It's not as simple as the other one. But let's start with what we do know. We know that x squared is going to be x times x. And then the question is, how do I get the 5 out? Is the 5 going to come out to the top, or is the 5 going to come out to the side? And here's how we decide. We need to now look at more than one box. So I do have a highlighter in here. So the question is, if I look at the boxes going up this way and I highlight the numbers, the 5 and the negative 3, and I ask myself, can the GCF of these, or in other words, can I divide both of these by 5? Can I pull that 5 straight out on here? The answer is no, I can't divide 3 by 5. But if I look at my factors going the other way, going across this way, and I have a 5 and a negative 5, I can divide both of those by 5, so really I should pull the 5 out here. Now, if you factored yours or you put your 5x somewhere else, just make sure that your 5x squared and 5x, both of those line up so that you can pull that 5 out. Okay, and then always make sure that you double check. X times 5x gives me 5x squared. All right, so you always have to make sure that this box is correct before you move on. So once that box is correct, and then I just do fill in the blank. 5x times something up here gives me negative 5x. Well, the 5x is already there. I'm just missing that negative, so that's just going to be negative 1. And then x times something over here is going to give me 3x. That's going to be 3. And then, of course, make sure that you check this last box, multiply that one out. Negative 1 times 3 gives me negative 3. All right, so again, that was factoring. We just factored, so now we are going to go in and we're going to set our factors equal to 0 and solve. So again, setting your factors equal to 0, you have this, x minus 1. Your other factor is 5x plus 3, and we set them equal to 0. Once we do that, then each individually we solve. Alright, so the first one is a pretty easy solve. We can put our box around our x. We do plus 1. That goes away. We have 1. We have that x is equal to 1. The other one's slightly trickier. We draw a line down our equal sign. We box in our 5x. We subtract 3 from both sides. Again, 0 pair, 0 minus 3. It's going to give me negative 3. And then this is going to come down. So we have that 5x is equal to negative 3. But just remember, we're not looking for what 5x is equal to. We're looking for what x is equal to. So there's going to be one more step with this one, and that's going to be to undo the multiplication that's going on between these two. Anytime a number and a letter are stuck together, that they're being multiplied. So to undo that, I need to divide. So I'm going to divide everything by 5. 5 divided by 5 is going to reduce to 1. When that reduces to 1, my x is going to come down. And then this is a fraction right now, negative 3 minus 5. So let's not overcomplicate our lives. Let's just bring that fraction down. Let's leave it in fraction form. So my answer to this is going to be negative 3 over 5. All right, so those are my two solutions. All right, we'll finish the last part, part 7, in the last video.